We are here with new episode. The event was meant to celebrate hip-hop's influence on music with a televised panel, some performances, and the usual scripted tributes. But when Eminem and 50 Cent walked onto the stage, it was clear that something was different. They weren't here to perform or celebrate. They were here to expose the truth. Eminem stepped up to the microphone, holding a piece of paper. His face was unreadable, but his body language said everything. This wasn't about promoting anything or looking back at the past. This was about revealing the biggest lie in the music industry live, in front of millions. 50 Cent stood slightly behind him, arms crossed, watching the crowd. He wasn't speaking yet, but his expression made it clear that he knew what was coming. Eminem tapped the paper against the mic stand and let it hang where the cameras could see it. "This," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "is a list of every artist who should have won and every artist who won instead." 50 Cent chuckled, shaking his head. "Man, this has been happening for years." The audience shifted. Some already knew what was coming, while others weren't ready. The host sitting at the side of the stage looked frozen. This was supposed to be a safe, industry-approved discussion. But this was something else. Eminem scanned the list. They want to talk about hip-hop's legacy? Fine. Let's talk about how they've ignored it for decades. Let's talk about the biggest names in the game being passed over on purpose. The room went silent. 50 Cent stepped forward. You ever notice how the same people keep winning over and over while the real ones never get their moment? Some people learn how to play the game, and the rest of us, they act like we don't exist. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled. The teleprompter had nothing for this. But it was too late. The truth was already out. The stage lights were bright, but the room felt cold. Nobody clapped. Nobody laughed. The air was thick with tension, realization, maybe even fear. Eminem tilted the paper forward, making sure the cameras got a clear view. The names on that list spoke for themselves. Legends who had been erased from Grammy history. Artists who should have been celebrated but never were. They've been doing this for decades, Eminem said. His voice was calm, steady anger that had been building for years. They lie to us. They use us when they need us. They put us on stage, let us perform, let us sell out arenas. But when it's time for real respect, when it's time to give out awards that actually matter, he glanced at 50 Cent, then back at the audience. They act like we don't exist. The crowd shifted. Some leaned forward, others exchanged glances. Everyone knew what he was talking about. But no one had ever said it like this. Eminem took a breath and dropped the first bombshell. DMX had the biggest rap albums of the year, twice. You know how many Grammys he got for it? 0. 50 Cent let out a quiet laugh. Say that again, man, 'cause I don't think they heard you. Eminem didn't blink. DMX had the biggest rap albums 2 years in a row. No Grammys. Not even a nomination for Album of the Year. The audience murmured. Some had known this, some hadn't. But now, no one could ignore it. Eminem flipped to another name. Nas. One of the greatest lyricists of all time. Almost 30 years before he won his first Grammy. Another pause. Snoop Dogg. 0 Grammys. Tupac. 0 Grammys. A sharp inhale rippled through the crowd. So don't sit here and tell me this ain't rigged, 50 Cent said, stepping forward. They act like they respect us. They let us headline. They let us perform. They let us carry their whole damn show. But when it's time to hand out the trophies, they find a way to give them to someone else. Eminem nodded. Every time. The host at the side of the stage looked like he wanted to disappear. Eminem tightened his grip on the mic. This isn't about me. It never was. This is about all the artists they did this to before us and all the ones they're still doing it to now. Silence. Then the weight of his words finally sank in. 50 Cent adjusted the mic. He looked at the crowd, some people shifting uncomfortably, others locked in, waiting for what came next. Then he let out a low chuckle. You all remember 2004? A few murmurs rippled through the audience. They knew where this was going. I do, he said, shaking his head. That was the year I lost Best New Artist to Evanescence. The room tensed. It wasn't just that 50 Cent lost. It was that he lost when he had one of the biggest debut albums of all time. Get Rich or Die Trying changed hip-hop. It was a movement. And yet, when it was time to recognize that, they handed the award to a rock band. I knew right then, 50 Cent said, "This whole thing is rigged." Eminem nodded, arms crossed, letting 50 take the floor. "Now look," 50 said, "I ain't got nothing against Evanescence. But let's be real. Have you ever seen a new artist blow up the way I did that year? My album went multi-platinum. My singles were everywhere. My music videos were on non-stop rotation. But somehow, someway, they made sure I didn't win." He glanced at Eminem. "Sound familiar?" Eminem smirked. "Every year." The crowd was silent. Some people nodded. Some artists in the back looked down at their feet. But 50 wasn't done. "You know what really showed me how fake this is? My album, the same album that ran the whole year, lost Best Rap Album to Speakerboxxx The Love Below." Another pause. "Now, I respect Outkast. But let's be real. You really think that album was bigger than mine?" Gasps. Heads shaking. Nobody wanted to answer that question. Eminem stepped in. "See, this is what they do. When hip-hop dominates, they change the rules. When they can't ignore us, they find someone else to give it to." 50 Cent nodded. "Exactly. They let us sell records, break records, and dominate the music industry, but when it's time to give credit, they look the other way." 50 Cent took a deep breath, gripping the microphone. "The craziest part is that it's not just about us. It's still happening today." The audience wasn't sure how to react. Some people nodded in agreement, while others sat frozen. But one thing was clear, this conversation wasn't stopping. It was just getting started. Eminem flipped the paper over. The front listed the biggest snubs in Grammy history, names that should have won but didn't. On the back, however, was a different kind of list, the names of those who always won. He held it up for the cameras, letting the moment sink in. He spoke calmly, "And here's the other side of it, the people who figured out how to play the game." The room shifted. Some people leaned back, others moved forward. His voice was steady and cold. "This isn't just about talent. It's about who the industry chooses to win. If you don't follow their rules." 50 Cent jumped in. "You get nothing." Eminem nodded. "Nothing." The host, who had already lost control of the conversation, tried to defend the Grammys. "But haven't the Grammys honored hip-hop? I mean, look at..." Eminem cut him off, shaking his head. "No, they haven't." He pointed to the back of the paper. "They give a few trophies to the same people over and over again. And they do it so they can say, 'See? We support hip-hop.'" 50 Cent smirked. "And what happens when someone comes along that they don't like? Someone who doesn't fit their image?" Eminem flipped back to the front of the page. "They bury you." The audience was completely silent. This wasn't just a rant anymore. It was an exposure of the entire system. They let a few artists win just enough to keep people quiet. But if you don't fit their mold, if you don't play the game their way. 50 Cent chuckled, shaking his head. "You're done." Some people in the audience turned to each other. A few artists had clearly experienced it themselves. Then 50 Cent let out a sharp laugh. "And don't even get me started on who they give Grammys to before actual hip-hop legends." Eminem smirked. "Oh, we're getting to that." At that moment, the industry knew this wasn't just a speech, it was a reckoning. Eminem let the silence sit for a moment. The audience was tense, whispering, wondering how far this would go. Then, he said something that made the entire room freeze. Some people figured out how to play the game perfectly. 50 Cent stepped forward, smirking. "Oh yeah. Some people cracked the code." The crowd tensed. They knew exactly where this was going. Eminem exhaled sharply and shook his head. "Look at Jay-Z." A few gasps. No one said a word. "Look at Beyoncé." More whispers. This was a direct hit. 50 Cent didn't hold back. "Jay, man, you know what I'm saying is true. You learned how to play the game, and they rewarded you for it." Eminem nodded. And I get it. You do what you have to do. But let's be real, would they ever let someone like DMX or Nas win over and over again like that? The tension in the room was unbearable. Then, 50 Cent dropped the real bombshell. You ever wonder why Blue Ivy got a Grammy before some of the biggest hip-hop artists of all time? Dead silence. Eminem folded the paper and placed it back on the podium. That's the game. That's how it works. And everybody in this room knows it. Reports later said that Jay-Z and Beyoncé looked shocked when they heard about this moment. 50 Cent nodded and looked around the crowd. Some of y'all are going to pretend you don't see it, but we all know. And after tonight, nobody can ignore it anymore. For a few seconds, the entire music industry stood still. The audience, the network, the industry, no one knew how to react. Eminem and 50 Cent hadn't just criticized the Grammys. They had exposed the entire system, live on national television, in front of millions of people. And there was no taking it back. Eminem leaned against the podium and exhaled. The job was done. He had said everything he needed to say. But before he stepped away from the MIC, he left one final statement. We don't need your trophies. We made history without you. Then, he pushed the paper aside like a contract he had just rejected. 50 Cent chuckled and stepped forward one last time. He glanced at the audience, then at the cameras, then at the people in the room who refused to meet his eyes. Jay, man, I ain't mad at you. But I'm not playing this game. And with that, they walked off the stage. Within minutes, the footage spread across social media. Fans were divided. Some praised Eminem and 50 Cent for finally saying what people had whispered about for years. Others felt they went too far, that dragging Jay-Z and Beyoncé into it was unnecessary, that they had burned every bridge in the industry. The Grammys quickly released a statement, claiming they had always supported hip-hop and pointing to past winners. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Jay-Z, a man who had once boycotted the Grammys himself, now found himself at the center of the controversy. Beyoncé, always poised, reportedly stayed silent. But the real question wasn't their reaction. It was what would happen next. One thing was certain, the music industry would never be the same. The world had just watched Eminem and 50 Cent expose the truth on live TV. Now, the only question was, would the industry finally change, or would they just find another way to keep the game rigged? Like and subscribe our channel.